morning អ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នា Good morning everyone. I am Manet, a startup development specialist, and I would like to welcome you all to our fifth episode of our Spark Hour podcast. If you're interested in data management or data analytics, today is your day. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest, Mr. Ralf. Hi.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you for having me, Manet. Honored to be here.
So, have you had any breakfast yet?
I did, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so before starting, may I know what kind of topic are we going to talk about today?
Well, my current field of operation is like data warehousing. So it's like a subcategory of IT, and it focuses a lot on data and databases and like transforming data to make it more useful to be used for companies, so they can make like managerial decisions, executive decisions, and stuff like that. Yeah, that's about what it does. And other than that, I'm just also like an all-around tech guy. So I can provide insight in multiple subjects if you want. But I think we're going to talk about data warehousing first and foremost. So yeah, let's take it from there.
Interesting. So before going in depth, may I know your background, your bibliography? So where are you studying and stuff, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I finished my master's at the University of Applied Sciences in Amsterdam, and the course I took was business IT and management. That's my most recent education. And before that, I also did some developing myself, so coding and stuff. And even before that, I did like IT management, which is basically like the physical work you need to do to have an IT landscape. So you can think about putting down servers, installing servers, and maybe doing some cabling, like providing internet to buildings. So yeah, I think I have quite a broad knowledge about IT and itself and all the aspects that comes with it.
Okay. So may I know like what kind of company are you currently working on right now?
You mean my company, right?
Yeah.
So my company specializes in developing software for hospitals or healthcare facilities, and it's like an all-encompassing solution. So like it goes from the financial systems to the patient registry. But also you could think of it like scanning devices. So like when you have measurement devices, there's also data coming in, and we also take the data and put it in databases. So it's they call it all you can X. That's what we call it. It basically means like an all-inclusive package, software package, which like if you roll it out in your healthcare facility, you're good to go. So you basically have all kinds of operations available within the software. And I myself am part of the data warehousing team. So that's just actually a smaller piece of the entire company. So yeah, but that's what we do, and we have a lot of opportunities as well in our company. So but currently I'm liking the data warehousing, and yeah.
So would you be able to provide more in depth on your like in your team? Do you have like different kind of person doing each different thing in data warehouse?
Yes.
Like your architecture, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can divide my department, data warehouse, in maybe 4 different teams. So it starts off with the project team. These are the people that actually go to the hospitals, to the clinics, and talk to the IT professionals there, and maybe give some workshops and stuff. Then we have the software development team who actually make the software that allows us to build a data warehouse. Then you have the ETL team, which I'm currently part of, which are the people who like take the raw data from the hospitals and transform it into something more useful, which we can use. And when we are finished with that, as the ETL team, we give it to our BI, which stands for Business Intelligence. And these people are the people who actually make the end product, which can be like reports or flowcharts or dashboards. Like they make the visualization of the data we give them. So if you talk about data, then if I give you data, then it would not make a lot of sense to you. But like if I give my transform data to my BI team, they make something visual. So the end customer only gets to see like these reports, so they can like actually visualize the data. They can see like graphs, like showing maybe how many patients come in at a certain point in time, or maybe like if you think about financial systems, you can see like what kind of treatments are like more profitable than others, or that's the stuff that my BI team does. And that's actually the product we ship to the customer in the end, the visual products. So we have like, sorry, yeah.
No, you can continue.
I was saying like, so we have like this chain of 4 teams, and all together we make the end product. So it's also so it's very IT specific, and each step gets less technical, if I might say so. And then in the end, it's like a product you can ship to the customer. So that's only within my department. So yeah, that's about what we do at my department, data warehouse. And within my company, we have like multiple departments like that, focusing on different kind of facets for hospital and healthcare. Yeah.
Interesting. So going into data, may I know what kind of data like do you do? Is it in numbers? Is it or in survey question? Or what kind of data are you analyzing?
Well, that depends on what the customer wants. Usually it's just like with a data warehouse, you have like not one type of data, because that's not really interesting. What's interesting is if you take multiple kinds of data and combine them and then make something useful out of it. So you could think of it like, for example, you can see like you have like a database encompassing patient information, like names, where they're from, age group, ethnicity, stuff like that, you know. So you can like use that data and like group it in different bins, if I may say. And then you can take another database information data like treatments. So you can couple these together, and then you can start to discover patterns within the data. And with these patterns, you can then start making these reports I talked about, which lets managers make better executive decisions. Like you could think about decisions which are more cost effective or altogether for healthcare more effective. You can find like, well, in the Netherlands, you have like these lists of information you need to provide to the insurance companies each year. And we can make it so that they can just click on one button somewhere in a report, and it generates all the necessary information they need. So if you talk about what kind of data we use, it's not, I could say all available data. The more the merrier, you know? More data, more information equals more useful reports for the end customer. So, but like I said, like we focus specifically on hospital and healthcare. So you could see it in those regions. We don't deal with information about building buildings or street work. You know, it's only healthcare and healthcare related data. Yeah.
So when you mean by data, like do you need to collect the data by your own company, or like you can get it from like a free data software, or like a free data from the website or something?
So no. So the data we use as my department is solely from our software product my company makes. So we can only provide data warehousing services to hospitals or facilities who actually use my company's main software, like the entire suite, because you have to also deal with legal issues, of course, because you cannot just access data and stuff. You need to actually have consent from the customer. So like that's not really my department, but they're like legal contracts which, when they sign to use our software, they allow us to use that data, of course scrambled. We cannot actually use actual patient information because that's private. And then we can use that to make data warehousing products. So,
Yeah. So I don't want to go into depth into what kind of software, but I just wanted to know, like, for your overall like company software, what is it about, and how do people put data in their web software or something?
So you could see it like, if I may run through a use case or something like so. For instance, when a patient comes into a hospital, he gets registered at the reception. So there you have data. You have the patient name, where he's from, his age and stuff, and from there he goes to his appointment. So that's also data. So patient goes to appointment. Now you have patient, you have appointment. The appointment he goes to is probably a treatment. So you have more data. You know the treatment from the patient. So that's like the flow of data we collect, and the data comes to us in that way. So like there's actually clerks typing the data. So like registering the patient, the doctor is going to scan some card, like saying, okay, patient is now entered my facility, and now we can begin treatment. That's also more data coming in, and that's like how we get the raw data, if I may say. It's just your everyday business, and everything that's getting registered somewhere in a computer is data we can then use to make data warehousing products. So it's not like you can find default data on a website or something. It's really all generated by the hospital itself. So it's also like when you have a new when we have a new client, a new hospital signing up for our software. In the beginning, there's not a lot of data. You need to like start collecting data over years and years before you can get a big enough pool of data to actually make useful products for it. So that's one challenge we face sometimes, because not all hospitals use our software yet. So when they like looking for a new provider for IT in their hospital, and they choose us, what we then can do or try to do is like collect historical data from other systems and then transform it into our systems. Now that's stuff I can't really go into because that's not my expertise, but I'm glad that the people at my company can do that, so they can provide us with this historical data that's already present from another competitor besides my company, and then we can start using that. But there's no real way to like have data without actually having patients go to the hospital and do their treatments or stuff like that.
Yeah. I may not know like the difference between like doing data in Cambodia or in Netherlands, but I just wanted to know, do you need to analyze your data every day, or only when the hospital needs your data that you can do the analysis, or do you need to analyze it every day?
Well, you have options there. I think what you mean is like if you need to load it in each day, or well, you have two options there with data warehousing. One is we call initial load. That means like you load in all the data at once, and that takes a long time, because when I talk about hospital data, I'm talking about millions and millions of records of data, and if you want to take that data and transform it to something more useful, you gotta have some processes handle that, and that takes a lot of time. The other option is an incremental load, which basically is the same, only it looks what's already available and only take the new data, which it doesn't have yet, and loads it in the data warehouse. And that's what we prefer, because first and foremost, it takes less time to collect the data and transform it. And second, it's more cost efficient as well, because it lets you save space, like server space or bandwidth space. And it's also more interesting for the customer, because then they have to invest less money in their IT infrastructure to actually get to the same result. So that's the two options we have for loading in the data. And I don't think there are more options at the moment. It's like either the full initial load or the incremental load, and then the incremental load is the preferred one. Yeah.
Okay, so like for the process, like from the raw data into the final product, the finished product, do you know, like, can you say like how long does it take for each department to do the analysis, like, for the data?
Yeah, that really depends on the amount of data that needs to be processed, really. Currently, if I would say, like I said, there are like some tables. If I say tables, I mean like a part of a database, like hosting certain data. You have like tables which contain like maybe 600 million records. If you want to load that, it's going to take a long time. But that depends on your current IT specs, like how powerful is your server and how fast can it load, how fast is your network connection. And you also have like way smaller tables which can take up to maybe 1 second and then it's done. So it really depends on the question you want to be answered with the data, how long it takes. But in general, it's like the process of loading in the data is like a continuous process. So it's always in motion. So when I talk about incremental loads, you need to see it like when a new patient registers at the hospital and the man or the lady at the desk enters his information in the computer, then that's new data. And with an incremental load, it recognizes that and immediately starts taking that piece of data, putting it in the data warehouse. So you don't have to wait for it anymore, because it's instantly starting that process of taking that data and transforming it. That's why we prefer the incremental load. With an initial load, you could say like maybe wait till the end of the day, and we take all the new data that's been entered in the system and then load it into the data warehouse. So, and that way you won't be able to like have real-time information available to your end customer, because they always need to wait to the next day before the new data is loaded in. And that's why the incremental load is always, I think, always preferred above the initial load method. You always want to have as up-to-date information as possible. Because you can act on information. When you want to act on information, you want it to be real-time. You want it to be updated. You want to see the data as it is right now. And if you see the data and you're looking at it and it's the data from the day before, it's less interesting, and it's harder to make decisions based on that at the moment. So that's like really important in data warehousing, that you can provide real-time data as fast as possible and without delay, because then the executives can make the decisions like at the moment it's registered.
Oh, so you need to provide like real life data every day to the executive, to the hospital, so that they can make decision like every day or something like that? Or
that's our philosophy. Like, but I cannot really look inside the mind of a manager or a director. If he buys our product and he wants to have the information, it needs to be available to him the moment he asks for it. Like when he opens his dashboard or opens his report, the data needs to be there and it needs to be up to date. So I cannot say like, oh, he's going to open it at 12 o'clock today, so it needs to be available then. No, our philosophy is like, it needs to be available the moment he requests it. So he can then, when he starts making decisions, he can just ask for the data, and then he gets it and he makes the decision. And that's like, I think that's for the customer, that's the best way to experience our products.
Interesting. So I know each company have like the advantage and disadvantage of using data warehouse. Would you be able to provide me the advantage of using data warehouse? Then we can go into the disadvantage, but I know the advantage would be more than disadvantage.
Well, for example, if you could like, let's see if I can think of something. Like if you want to start estimating hospital bed occupation, like how many patients will there be in my hospital or in my clinic at a certain day or time, then an advantage would be, I think, if you can look up historical data, and based on that data, you can like say, oh well, we've seen that like in December months, for the past few years, we see a huge influx of patients coming in. So an advantage then by knowing that would be that you can scale up operations or scale down based on the amount of patients coming in. Like if the data shows that December months are having a lot of patients coming in, then you can start by maybe having more doctors on active duty at that moment in time, because you know that based on the historical data. And the other way around is like when you know there's less patients coming in based on what happened like each year before, you can scale down operations. So you can say like, okay, we see now that we need less active personnel. So we can maybe like have, instead of 4 doctors on the floor, we can have 2 this month, and then maybe 1 on standby. So that's an advantage, because then you can make cost-effective decisions as a manager by having more or less personnel on duty, which equals to like less working hours to be paid, if you know. So that's one example of an advantage you could get with like analyzing data.
So before going to the disadvantage, we actually had one comment in our Facebook. So it's from Miss Sophie. She asks, what tool do you use for the data integration? What kind of tool do you do analysis and integrate with the data?
Well, we use mainly well, I mean, I think the person means like for the end product. I'm not sure, but we used reporting servers, but we start now to convert to Power BI, which is also a program which lets you visualize the data. And if I get the question correct, but and for like loading in the data, we built our own like my department, like the software team of my department, we have our own in-house tool built to like load in the data. Like we extract it, transform it, and load it. It's like the ETL process, which is common in data warehousing. So we don't use a third-party tool for that. Just for the end products, we use mainly Power BI now. If that answers the question of the watcher viewer.
I hope this answered the question.
I hope so as well.
Okay. Yeah. So getting back to the advantage and disadvantage, I think there is also a disadvantage. Would you be able to provide like some of the disadvantage?
Yeah, that's hard to say, because we only work on bettering healthcare with our product. You know? So if a disadvantage, well, of course, there can be a disadvantage. Like with the use case I just gave, we see like in previous years, like hospital beds occupation is going to be more in December, but maybe that's not always correct. You know, there can like for instance, we had the pandemic, which saw a huge influx in patients coming in. Of course, you cannot predict stuff like that really, because that's like incidents that happen. So you cannot really predict incidents based on data. So that's, I think, a disadvantage that you can have. So you can have like less staff on active duty, but then there's more people coming in than you expect. And I think that's something we should work on. But actually, we also in my company right now, we're starting to use our data warehousing for what's it called again? It's like we write software that learns, you know. I forgot the name. I'm so sorry about that. But well, what it does, I can do say, it's like it does predict like the possibilities of. It's machine learning. So we're incorporating machine learning right now with our data warehouse products. And I think in the future, that's going to be really important for predicting, even better predicting patterns within the data. Because machine learning is continuously, it goes on. Like you feed it data and it starts to process it, and it gets better and better and better and better. And if you let it run for, I don't know, maybe a year, it can make better predictions than you could with like maybe a team of 10 people. So maybe in the near future, we will be able to predict pandemics with data. I hope so.
So there's one question from Buna. So he asks, what do you think instead of Power BI, would you be able to use Hadoop software?
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's just. I think it's basically just the personal preferences and also, of course, like what your company is willing to invest in. But I mean, there's no real. You could use whatever you want. I'd say use whatever you're comfortable with, and if it's available to you, there's lots of options there you can choose from. It's just that for us, these products integrate well with our software. So we use them because of that. But Hadoop is also definitely a possibility. Same goes for database storage. You could use we use like SQL Server, but you could use anything you want actually. And same goes for like physical storage versus cloud storage. You could also choose between that. I think it's just based on the operations you serve and what your company's is like comfortable using. Like you have to have people who know how to work with SQL or with Power BI or with Hadoop. So if you only have people who are experienced with one kind of program, then of course you're going to be using that.
Okay, so there's another comment. She asked from Mrs. Sophie again. So she asked, what tool do you use for data ingestion instead of integration?
I'm afraid I'm not really sure what she means by that. Maybe it's just my lack of knowledge in that department. But with data injection, if she means like how we transform the data, I'm not sure. Do you have like a live chat going on with them or?
yeah. So we're broadcasting our meeting into our Facebook Live.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm basically reading comment like if there's any question that our viewer would like to ask.
Well, then I would say I'm sorry, miss, but I might not really fully understand your question. But maybe we get back to it later, and I'll have a better answer for you.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe you can talk with like I could give you the contact to her. Yeah. If that's okay. Like
if she wants to ask, I can always like afterwards. I can always answer questions. That's fine. I love to talk about IT and stuff. So yeah, no problem at all.
So there's another question. It's from Mr. Seng Hong. He asked, like, are you using ETL or ELT?
We use ETL. Yes. Yeah.
Would you be able to elaborate more? Why would you use ETL instead of ELT?
Well, yeah, there's not really a lot to elaborate on. It's just that like my company's standard is we use the ETL process, and I don't think we are really experienced with the ELT T form of it. Like we build our software around the ETL process. So if you now would like want to change in what manner we extract, transfer the data, we would have to like rewrite our internal software, and I think that's gonna be that's not really cost efficient. So yeah, that's the only reason I can think of why we use ETL at this moment.
Nice. So every viewer, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask right now. And if not, I think we can say that we can use data warehouse like basically for everything. For example, like the airline, for airline banking, healthcare, public sector, investment and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, well, because wherever there is data, you can use that data to improve your operations. So it's not limited to the healthcare which my company operates in. You can use it in anything you want. So if there's a sufficient amount of data you can work with, you can start making analysis and start using the data to better your processes and operations of your company. So I would say, if you're not using data warehousing for your company, you're missing out. you're missing out on the possibility of improving your processes, like and maybe be more cost effective or yeah.
Yeah, so we just had a comment from Mrs. Sophie. She's doing like a sad face right now.
Oh no. Oh, sorry. You could give her my contact details from and I might be able to answer her later, so I can ask her about what she meant, because maybe it's just I have to like put aside now my schooling in IT was mainly in Dutch, so like the terms we use now, of course they're like global, but maybe we use just a little bit of different terms when we work. So maybe I might not fully understand the question of her that way, but yeah, I would love to answer her question if I get a chance.
Yeah, I probably shared you the contact if that's okay for you.
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's another one. Like he asked, how can you know that the data came into your data warehouse is correctly?
Yeah, well, we trust our programmers. No, of course. No, of course. There's a margin of error there, and but like when you're dealing with copious amounts of data, there's always a chance something is not right. Like, for instance, if we load in some data, which contains like say dates, like a date annotation, but the date annotation is wrong, then what we do to like make sure that there's no faulty data being shown is that then we say, okay, well, if the transformation or load does not complete successfully, we're just gonna ignore that batch of data for now, and we're gonna come back to it later. So that way we can ensure that there's no faulty data being presented to the customer. And what we also always do is like we at the top of our dashboards we show like a date and a timestamp from the most recent time the data has been loaded in. So, for instance, if there is an occasion that the data is not loaded fully in, and we say, okay, that batch gets processed later because now we can see there's faulty data in there, then the customer can also see that on top of their report, like showing, oh, but this data is not from today, it's from yesterday. And then they can either wait for it, or they can like call in a support ticket, and then we will answer to them by okay, well, your data is not up to date right now because we saw some faulty data coming in, and we can then look for that faulty data, like say a faulty date. For instance, you could have like a time annotation wrong, like you have 12:69. There's no 69 in the second margin, you know. And then we would say to the customer, okay, then let us look for this faulty data and we correct it. And then when it's corrected, we start the load process again, and then it will be successfully implemented. So that's how we do it. But yeah, I mean, if you're dealing with these amounts of data, there's always a possibility that something goes wrong, and you just have to be careful and like build in these safeguards for your customers so that they don't get presented these fault data, because especially for our operations, we work for healthcare, and we really don't want to provide doctors or nurses or staff with wrong data, you know, which they make decisions on, and that could potentially, of course, cost lives. So we're very careful with that and take it really serious as well.
Yeah, so that's a question. Like he asked, what is the distinction between a data mart and a data warehouse?
That's a good question as well. I think, but I'm not really sure about this, because my expertise is more in the field of providing my teams with the information they need to build stuff. But I think you have like a data mart, you have a data warehouse, you have a data lake, you have all kinds of different names for it, and they're slightly different everywhere. But I would not dare right now say what the difference is, because I might make a mistake and then I give people a wrong idea. So I'm sorry about that. But like I said, I'm not the. I think this is a question for someone with a bit more knowledge on the technical aspect of these theories, like data mart, data warehouse, data lake. You have a lot.
Oh, there's one interesting question. Like, so if you want to work in the data warehouse concept, like what skill do we need to know before we can work or do in the data warehousing?
Well, you have to have, of course, understanding of how to deal with data. I think one thing you really want to know is like how do you store it, and what kinds of way do you want to transform your data. So what we do is like we have, and then again I have to excuse everyone because we do it in Dutch, but we have like fact tables which contains like actual facts. You have to have like dimensions which contain like information about global, more information, and you have like we use information marts, we use dimensions, we use all kinds of different kind of ways to store our data. And if you want to incorporate a data warehouse, I think you should have at least a general knowledge about how to set up a data warehouse, so that you can make it fast and reliable to actually query the answers from your database. Yeah.
So there's a question like, what is the concept?
I just thought of something about the question about the question of information marts, because I think just came up with. I think the difference is an information mart contains. A data warehouse contains global information, like it stores everything, so that you can then build a data mart on top of it. And a data mart contains data specific to certain questions you want it to be answered. So, if I'm correct, I think that was the way it works. So, I hope I answered the question with that.
I think so. I think you did answer the question.
And the other question?
So what is the concept of a successful data warehousing? Like, how do you know if your data is analyzing success or something like that?
If your customers say to you that they by using your products they see advantages in making executive direction, I think if you supply your products to your customers and they're happy about it and they actually see like that it's helping them making better decisions in doing their business, then I think you have a successful data warehouse product. It's all about the needs of the customer in the end. So and I think also a data warehouse, you can build a data warehouse anywhere, but like the products you use with it, so like the data you use out of your data warehouse, that's really niche, if I might say. That's like really should really like connect with the needs of your customer.
Nice.
Good conversations and good understanding about what. Yeah?
No, go. Please.
Say
it. So basically, so I think since we are working with business and startup, I think it is really beneficial if any startup or any business would have a data warehousing department in the company. Do you think?
Yes, I think, like I said before, like where there is data, there's possibilities to use that data to enhance your business. So, but it's up to you or your startup or your company itself to decide, like, okay, do we want to invest in this? Do we see that this is making can work for us? Like in a really small business, it might be the cost you need to expand to like get it started might not weigh up to the benefits it provides to you. So it really depends business per business. But my philosophy is always like where there is data, there's room to use that data to improve your business. So I would say yes, but there's probably a lot of people who would like make the calculations and the cost calculations and say like, no, I don't think if we invest in this, it's gonna be beneficial enough to like cover the costs. So, but you should always,
from your
no, you should always when you like have a company, you always start like creating data. So it's not that you have to immediately start with a data warehouse. You can always like afterwards, like the data is going to be collected anyway. It's going to be generated by you as a business by default. So you can always like at a later moment decide, okay, now maybe we can now let someone take a look at our data and see if there's like patterns, or we can recognize something which can benefit our business. So it's never too late. It's also never too early.
True. Oh, there's another comment like from Mr. Sain Hong. He asked, which RDBMS are you using to build your data warehouse?
He means Rational Database Management Tool. I think we use, if I'm correct, but I think we use SQL Server Management Server. Yeah, we use Microsoft's product for that, if I'm correct. Again, it's not really in my field, but I think that's it.
Okay. So coming back into like sensitive information, like how do you have to have a secure enough system to protect a sensitive information?
Well, there are laws for that in Holland, so we have to abide by these laws, and these laws make it so that we always have to have consent from the patient to use their data. So when I talked earlier about using the patient data and that it's scrambled, what that means is that we cannot actually see the patient name. It will always be like randomized, no? But what we can see is like the important information, like we might not know the name of the patient, but we know that that patient took that treatment. So we know the amounts of treatments of that specific type which are being loaded into the database. So that's like personal information that's being withheld from us. Then again, there are laws in Holland which make it so that you cannot use personal information from people. So like I said before, we use the data generated by the software that my company makes. So we're just a department in my company, and that piece of privacy and security is already like at the top level of the software development suite. It's already being handled there, so we don't have to worry about it. Like we would never be able to see personal information from a patient in our data warehouse. And also, that's not really interesting. You cannot, it's not interesting to have that information. You're not gonna improve processes by knowing who took what treatments.
From your perspective, do you think that data warehousing would still be beneficial in the future, or there will be like other type of data that would be more like cost efficient and stuff rather than data warehousing from now?
Well, that's a good question, but and also a sensitive one because it's my job to data warehousing.
Oh, that's okay if you don't want it.
No. I mean, like it's more like, of course, we're talking IT, and IT is continuously developing. So of course, there's going to be better ways to handle these things we do now in the future, like what we see with machine learning now. It's probably gonna take away a lot of what we do as data warehousing as well, and take that aspects into machine learning maybe. So I think it's good, but I think the general concept of data warehousing will stay, but the way we do it might change in the future based on technology and evolving methods and stuff. But that's IT. I mean, if you work in IT, you're never done learning as well because it continuously evolves. That's the beautiful part of it, I think.
I think probably your company would also be evolve the same as how the new technology would evolve.
Of course, like we always try to go with the developments of products. Like for instance, what I said before is that we started out using reporting servers, but now we're transitioning more to Power BI, which is more of a newer suite used for reporting services. And of course, you have all kinds of stuff like that. So you should always like look what's new and what's improving and start investing in there and start looking at options you can incorporate that into your solution itself. So that's the beauty of it. You can always improve. You're never done improving your product.
So I think it's coming to an end. But before we end, if you have any more questions, we could probably answer for another couple of questions before we end the show. So basically, there's one question right now. Someone asked, what is the difference between view and materialized view? Would you be able to answer that?
That's again a quite technical question. I know views, but I think a view is based on information in a table, stored in a table, and it does not really. In my experience, using views is slow because you don't store the data. Let's say like you have what we do is we make certain information marts with tables specifically built to answer certain questions. If you want to do that by a view, then you would have to query that information at the moment you ask it. So it's going to take the machine longer, especially if you're like building views on huge tables, like with millions of records. I think it's going to be too slow to be useful. If that's.
Oh yes. So I think we're having internet difficulty for a second, but now we're back. Okay, so I think one last question before we end. So basically, from your concept, do you think that data warehousing would be beneficial applying to Cambodia contexts right now?
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of companies here as well, and I mean, what you asked me earlier, if it would be able to be used in other sectors, yes, I think I don't know if in Cambodia it's being broadly used, but I would say it's a missed opportunity if you're not using it. If you see the benefits of it, so I would say. Start getting data warehouse developers up and running. You could
probably come to Cambodia and work here instead.
Well, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, who knows?
If people know, but in all seriousness, I think of course you could use it anywhere in the world and not only specific to Cambodia, but it's up to the company itself to decide if they want it. And in my personal opinion, it's still like if there's data and you're not using it to like further your processes, your business, it's a missed opportunity. So I would always say at least be open-minded to it and like research if it might be able to help your company get further. It's always data is useful. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I think time is up, but before we end, would you be able to like give like a message, like a last message to our viewer?
Just in general?
Yeah, in general, like, yeah.
Well, just I would like to thank you all for the amount of questions you gave me. It also really put me on point, and now I also, like I said, also know that I don't know everything. I know quite a bit about what I'm doing, but yeah. And also like the amount of questions coming in, it's like I think it's there's a lot of people interested in this topic in Cambodia because it's also intelligent questions. So like there's people in this stream watching now who are probably way more technical advanced than me. So good job.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people watching our live stream right now.
Okay. Good, that's good. Well, I would like to say to you all like. Maybe start discovering what data warehouse can do for your business. And if you're like an IT person, start looking into data. Start looking into if you could like start maybe building your own database somewhere for your own small company and see what it can do for you.
Yeah, I think. Thank you very much, Mr. Ralf, for spending your time with us today. It was really good and really interesting. I was also really interested in data warehouse right now.
Right.
I probably do some more research on data warehouse starting from now on.
Yeah, there's enough information available there on the internet and everything. There's books, everything. So you could just start reading it. And it was. Thanks for having me, and it was a nice experience for me as well. I hope I did well by you, and I hope that the viewers got some extra information about data warehousing they were looking for.
Even if I did not came from an IT perspective, but I do understand now. Yeah, from what data warehousing, like in a general terms of data warehousing.
Okay, that makes me glad that I did good on that. All right. So now you're a data warehouse expert.
I think this is it right now. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching our live stream, our 5th episode. And if you're interested in watching our previous podcast episode, you can also go through our Facebook page, which is Techo Startup Center, and watch our previous one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Bye, Ralf.